And we are live. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining the Stockton REI Network Mastermind, our November edition. We have a bunch of new faces here, so I'm glad all of you were able to join. Just to give some background, I reached out to almost all of you on Bigger Pockets. A lot of, I know Gerald, James, and you guys know each other from that channel too. So this is really just a resource for all of us to really get in touch with each other and in touch with the market here. So I'm going to share my screen so that we're all on the same page on today's agenda. Let's see, let me make sure you guys can see the whole thing. Great. So with that in mind, hopefully you can see my entire screen. In terms of today's agenda, I want to start with introductions. We have a good group here. So let's definitely keep it concise. I know all of you submitted topics that you wanted to discuss in your registration. So we'll talk about that and then we'll get to announcements at the end. So in terms of introductions, please start with your name, where you're from, and your real estate investing experience. I think this is super helpful for the webinar or for the mastermind so that, if you have a question about multifamily, well, guess what? There's somebody who 10 years of multifamily experience here. If you're invested in flips, there's also somebody here with experience with flips. So tell us about your experience so that we can kind of ask questions and feel from the group. So I'll start with myself. My name is Willie Marquez, born and raised in Stockton, and I've been an investor here for about 7-8 years now. I own mostly single family homes in Stockton, but I also have condos and single family homes in other parts of California. And more recently, I was talking to Jason earlier, I have been investing out of state in Indianapolis for about 2-3 years now with a single family and a duplex out there. And that's kind of where I'm focusing on doing. I primarily do buy and hold. I haven't really done flips, but I've done a little bit of refinance, cash out, all those kind of minor things to get myself a little bit more cash to invest even further. With that in mind, I'm going to call out Gerald to go next and introduce himself, and then we'll go to Jason next after that.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? My name is Gerald. I'm from Stockton. I was born in the Bay Area. Real estate investing experience. I just acquired my first buy and hold, and right now I'm doing some wholesaling, and so I'm in search of great discounted deals, and my value to people is to provide off market opportunities, and so yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Gerald. Jason, if you don't mind going next, and then we'll go to Mark after that.
All right, Jason James. I'm originally from LA, but I'm a Stocktonian. I've been here for like the last 25 years, so I'm NorCal bred. In regards to just my investing, I've been investing now since about 2018. My first property was the Detroit property out of state. Right now, I'm currently house hacking. I closed on this property the last day of last year. Initially, my goal was to burr a multifamily this year, but COVID hit, kind of put everything on its back. So I took a back seat to kind of see where all the chips are going to land. But right now, I'm working on a light rehab, possibly, if not just kind of a paint and carpet property up in Detroit right now. And it'll be a single family, so I'm hoping to close that out by the end of this year, and then go back to focused on a multifamily next year in the same area. So
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Welcome. And great to hear that you have the out-of-state experience. I know several people here are interested in hearing about that. Mark, if you don't mind going next with your introduction, and then we'll go to Derek.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my name is Mark, and I apologize if you hear the music in the background. Next door is they're doing a concert over there with some music. So, but yeah, so I was born and raised in Valley Springs, California, Linden area. Lived in Stockton for about 8 years when I went to school, and then I recently just moved back to Valley Springs, and I spent the last year and a half kind of doing the self-education thing, Bigger Pockets, podcast, books, networking like this. And then I am currently looking to do my first property, which will be a house hack, a triplex out here near in the Valley Springs area. So currently in the middle of that, and that's where I'm at right now.
Awesome, Mark. Great to hear the house hacking experience. I know a lot of people are interested in that as well. Derek, if you don't mind going next, and then followed by Derek, we'll go Vineet.
Hi, I'm Derek. I'm in Hayward, from the Bay Area, born and raised to San Leandro, East Bay kid. And I currently own one single family in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I haven't got that up and running yet. So that's kind of a weak spot for me, but I am an owner. And I'm interested in what's going on out in the Valley. Out here in the Bay, prices are just insane. And I don't think makes any sense. So I'm hoping that we can find something out there.
Nice. Thanks, Derek. Welcome. And I used to live out over by Chabot College, so go Hayward. I hear you. Vineet, if you don't mind introducing yourself, and then we'll go Nico.
Sure. I'm Vineet. I'm from Bay Area. I live in Dublin, and most of my properties are in East Bay right now, like two of them. And I used to invest out of state, and I've invested in some syndication as well. So I've done a few things. So that's it.
Great. Thanks, Vineet. Nico, if you don't mind going next, and then we'll end with Yahuwah.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Nico. I'm actually really fresh into this real estate, basically everything around it. I just recently joined a community, so I'm really getting down and dirty with basically the learning the ins and outs of everything. I'm really wanting to focus more towards wholesaling right now. I'm from Stockton, born and raised, and I'm just excited to get going.
Great. Welcome, Nico. Yahuwah, if you don't mind closing us out.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Yalha, and I'm an immigrant. I spent a few years living in Chicago and then moved to the Bay Area. I'm currently living in Milpitas, which is in the South Bay. So I have a day job that's not real estate related. So I'm like more interested in more like passive style investing. So like Stockton is something new to me. I'm like eager to learn about it and see if there's any opportunity. Yep.
And apologies for totally butchering your name for the first 10 minutes of this mastermind, but thanks for joining, Yaha.
All right, thank you.
Great. So when all of you registered, you all submitted some discussion topics that you were interested in discussing further in today's mastermind. We have about 45 minutes, and I want to make sure we hit on everybody's topics that they submitted. So we'll definitely do the best we can here. But I think first off, I think we can go down this list, but also have an open discussion forum about what questions you have or kind of what topics you're interested in hearing about. So I do want to open it up to the group. I know you all have some ideas of what you'd like to discuss, but this is basically an open forum for us to kind of throw out ideas, throw out questions. So I want to defer first to kind of ask the group if you guys have any questions that you wanted to bring up to the group. Or we can kind of pick one of these questions that you mentioned during registration, but it's really an open forum for all of us to bring up any questions or topics we wanted to discuss right now. So feel free to come off of mute and ask away.
I'm open for any. They're all pretty good topics in my opinion.
Yeah, I think yeah, go ahead, Gerald. I see you came off of mute.
You know, I was hoping for Miguel to show up, but if any of you have any experience building or flipping, my question was that what is the typical cost per square foot on a flip in the south side and the central side of Stockton? I don't know if anyone has any experience flipping. Yeah, I know that there's that the 70% rule for that analyzing, and I know with our higher market that it's usually adjusted a bit higher. So I'm thinking maybe at 80% of the ARV.
Yeah, personally for myself, I don't have flipping experience. I'm not too familiar with the rules of thumb there. I know we've had other people join who have a lot more experience in that. But I just want to bring it out to the group if anybody has any kind of flipping experience. I think I, I believe Yauha and Vineet. I don't know if this is something that you've dabbled in with flipping. Is if that's kind of your investment strategy.
Sorry, no, I have zero flipping experience. But I guess like the expenses really depends on the condition of the property. So
Yeah, I mean, I have invested with people who have done flips, but I haven't managed or done anything spectacular with it. So no.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I think we'll definitely start with this first topic here that we have listed about Stockton. Obviously, Stockton Mastermind here, but you know, I saw this growing trend of migration from the Bay Area, types of properties, market direction of Stockton and neighborhoods, and after repair values. So I think I'll chime in with my thoughts here, and then I definitely lean on the group to share. But I don't know if you've joined us in previous masterminds, but we've actually have a few people who work full time in the Bay Area and do live in Stockton. We've been seeing quite a bit of people who are able to work from home, work remotely, and so Stockton is an alternative for them to live in a almost an entire house in that sense and be able to work full time. I will say myself, I actually do work. My 9 to 5 job is in sales and marketing for an e-commerce company in the Bay Area, and I do live in Stockton. My company has told us that we're able to work from home for the remainder of the year, all the way through July 2021. So it's definitely lower cost of living in that sense. And I know we've had a previous webinar where Erica, who is a realtor that I actually use, has been crazy busy lately with Bay Area investors looking for homes. And that's definitely been driving up the prices. Unfortunately, I don't have quantitative numbers to give or stats on that. It's all anecdotal. But I think that's definitely a trend that I'm personally seeing. In terms of market direction, you know, honestly, for me, I still keep an eye out for properties in the Stockton area. More specifically, I try to look at 4 bedroom, 2 bathroom homes, single family homes in Stockton, and those are just flying off the shelves. Every one indicator that I recommend if you don't already do it is save your properties that you're interested on Zillow, have an alert, but check in regularly on the number of saves that a particular house has, and you'll see in the first 1 day or 2 day for 4 bedroom, 2 bathroom homes that it'll have going from one save in the first hour to about 60 saves in the next 2 days. And that'll tell you that that home is pretty much going to go off, go over and above the listing price. In addition to that, I think I follow Redfin quite a bit on the mobile app, and they have that hot home indicator that really just tells you if that home is going to be bid up in price, and it's going to come off the market quite a bit. So I would leverage those. I would leverage those apps and their kind of trending indicator to tell you whether a home is going to be going above listing price and whatnot. But in terms of market direction, I was actually having this discussion with Jason earlier, but you know, for myself, I invest out of state primarily now, and I have been seeing a lot more homes come onto the market, but also sit on the market quite a bit. And I've been seeing price drops in the Indianapolis area where I invest. And so that I'm, you know, Jason, maybe you can kind of tell us your experience, but what I've seen is that the trends that happen in Indianapolis slowly roll out to California. So, for example, if more supply is hitting the market out of state, then you'll eventually see more supply hit in our local area. And so what I'm seeing is I am seeing homes come onto the market in Stockton, but they are slowly becoming more lower in price and having price drops because those people who are bringing homes to market are having almost unrealistic expectations for how much it'll actually sell for. So that's my 2 cents on the area. I try to keep a pulse on Stockton just because I'm always looking at properties here. But if anybody has any follow-up questions or any wants to add any 2 cents to what they're seeing in Stockton, feel free to chime in.
Willie, I'm not sure. Like, for example, you're talking about 4 bedroom, 2 bath. Are you talking about like long-term buy and hold, or are you talking about like flipping? I'm not sure if like those houses in Stockton area would cash flow or not. Like from what I see, you're buying like those like duplex, triplex, fourplex. Those probably can barely cash flow neutral. Um, but single family, I guess, is probably also negative.
Yeah, so that's a great question. What I was referring to is just homes that are mostly single family homes that are coming into the market for a 4 bedroom, 2 bathroom. I will say that most of them are move-in ready. I've barely seen a home that needs some work that's at a 4 bedroom, 2 bathroom level. And I have a network of potential renters that allow me to cash flow at a higher purchase price. And so with that in mind, I have a higher tolerance for what a purchase price will work for me. I am strictly speaking in terms of, I think what I'm seeing mostly is that families are looking for this 4 bedroom, 2 bathroom, not necessarily investors, just because of the additional flexibility it gives in terms of bedrooms and bathrooms. So, yeah, in terms of being able to cash flow, I'd say my situation is unique. Just to give you guys some insight, I work with a nonprofit to help provide them some housing, and they're able to pay a premium in order to provide housing to people who are in homeless or at risk of homelessness. And so they actually get their income from a county grant where they're able to afford higher rent rates. So that's kind of the background that I'm referring to there. But I am interested if all of you are kind of keeping a pulse on the Stockton market, or even if you live locally, what are you seeing? What trends? What's been catching your eye in the Stockton market?
Oh, one thing that I really wonder is um, like the rent collection situation for um, like really your renters are like a niche market, right? But like I'm wondering like for the general renters, how is the rent collection going, and whether the landlords are having some pressure because they're not collecting rent.
Yeah, that's a great question. Anybody have any? I'm happy to share my 2 cents on it, but I'm curious how everybody else is doing with rent collections in the Stockton area. Has it been going pretty smoothly for you? Any kind of personal testimonies here?
So for me, I'm on the lucky ones. There has been no issues. I use Cozy. My tenant pays like a day early every time. In the Detroit market, when the pandemic first hit, there was a hiccup for about 3 weeks, and then she got back on track. And she was truly impacted by COVID. And then I want to say it was like in June, but then she got caught back up. But in this market, luckily for me, it's been good. The tenants are still working, so their jobs are essential. So I haven't had to deal with that for me personally.
Yeah, Vineet, I see you came off of mute. Do you want to add your 2 cents here?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the Stockton market, but in East Bay, like my tenants are paying, but as I told you the last time, I had a vacancy and I haven't been able to fill that up. Like it's just been that slow to fill the vacancy up, and it's been more than 2.5 months now.
Got it.
Have you had a lot of inquiries and just no one's kind of meeting the criteria, or it's just no
No,
inquiries
it's
at all?
just Yeah, so there are two phases. There are a lot of inquiries because but it's closer to Berkeley, so there are no students. And then the ones who were living lost their jobs, so they moved out. But nobody is moving around. And everybody is seeing the prices being slashed down month to month, week to week. So they like even if they come, they said that they will wait because there are just way too many options right now, rather than like people just getting into the houses right now. They're just around me itself. There are like 4 or 5 places which are sitting in like different capacities, like in duplex, in fourplexes, which are just sitting there.
Yeah, I can echo like what Vineet said about like taking longer to fill like the vacancy. Like I have a friend who was trying to fill his house through a couple months earlier, and it's taking long. And I was paying attention to some of the local um, social groups for like renting, and I can see some of the landlords are like posting their ads for I don't know for months, and they're still there and posting every 2 days. Um, I don't know about um, like for example in the Bay Area, there's a market for short-term rentals, and the people that I know who are managing those rentals, they are also doing well because there is less demand for like the real short-term rentals, just like hotel. They're also renting those units to longer-term renters, so that could add to the supply. And on the other hand, like um, some of the renters, they may move to other places uh, as well. For example, I'm an engineer, and like one friend that I know working in the same company, he basically flies to Hawaii to work from there for a while, and it's pretty cheap. Um, so yeah, I guess like those more densely populated cities before COVID are now having like a bigger issue with filling tenants, whereas I guess other places like Stockton, Sacramento, places outside of the more expensive Bay Area, because some people are, going outside the Bay Area. These places may actually have a time where it's, like renters are competing for places, but that's just my guess.
Yeah, thanks, Yauha and Vineet, for that comment. I think I personally, I personally have an experience with that. I own a property near University of the Pacific in Stockton, and Vineet, I had the same issue with you, as you're having with my tenants that were there for about 2 years were students of the University of the Pacific, and they decided not to renew their lease. Is a little concerning just because they were paying a premium in order to live really close to the campus. So it was really great. It's a really great opportunity to cash flow. The they moved out in July of this year. And so I had my listing up for about a month, and I was actually able to fill it with a family that I had to drop the rents probably around $200 in order to fill the vacancy. The problem I was having in the Stockton market is not necessarily demand. There was definitely a lot of demand for the home. It was the qualified demand that I was having issues with, where people weren't having the rent scores or the income to rent ratio to meet the criteria that I needed. Fortunately, I was able to find a family that did meet those criteria, and they've been paying regularly ever since. I will say, with that in mind, in terms of across my rental properties, I've screened my tenants quite well in order to ensure that they have 3x times rent or have above a 660 credit score. So I haven't had any rent collection issues on that front. But the one thing I do want to add is, yeah, Stockton is unique in the sense that it is not a metro area, and I think Yauha and Vinny kind of made a testament to this. Is I think it's hard to say whether that is I don't know, larger macroeconomic trend where these larger metro areas are having so much supply in units that people can potentially rent out that it's making it harder to cash flow for us smaller investors that have a spot to rent out. But I will say, in terms of my experience with the Stockton market, and I have been hearing in the Slack conversations that we do have that some of the apartment four units and over are having a surge in demand in terms of people who are interested in wanting to rent their units. But that is here in the Stockton market, not in the Bay Area or near Berkeley. So that's kind of my personal experience. If anybody else wants to add in their 2 cents about how rent collection is going, feel free to chime in. Great. I think we can move on to another topic here. I think there were these questions about landlord processes and systems for efficiency, and also inheriting tenants. If you submitted these suggestions during registration, feel free to chime in about what you were kind of inquiring about. I think Mark had that comment right? Is that correct, Mark?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did say, yeah, the inheriting tenants. I'm not sure if I said the landlord processes, but that definitely would be helpful as well, regardless. And I probably did say it. I don't know.
Yeah, I see it's
But
all on one line. But
okay.
what questions on inheriting tenants or landlord processes are you curious about?
I guess. Well, I'm in the middle of the triplex right now. There's three tenants. They're all three occupied. Two of them who have been there for 5 years plus, like a little over 5 years, are month to month, and then there's one that's been there a little less than 1 year who is in a year-long lease. And at the time, I was just basically considering, because then as I ran numbers for this property, everything looked really great, and everything still is great, but it was unexpected. I had not taken it into consideration that the landlord is paying for the water, sewer, and garbage. So it was an extra $348 that I wasn't expecting. But luckily, I mean, just the way the place is priced at and what we have it under contract for and how the numbers work, at this point, I would essentially be breaking even if I wasn't able to get into it. And for some reason, I'm not able to move into one, I'd be breaking even. So I guess what my concern was at the time when I wrote that was, they all pay a flat rate of $25 for garbage. And then I also considered passing that on to them, but continuing to pay the water and sewer, which could vary in between units, but averages $91 a unit based off what the utility company told me. And so what I was wondering, well, if I pass off the garbage to them and also raise their rent by about 5%, it's only an extra 30 to 40 bucks for each of the units. It would help offset those costs. And that is actually when I would break even, now that I mentioned that. But if I do not pass off any cost to them, I take this property over. If I was not living in it, I would basically be probably paying about 200 bucks a month or so, or 150 bucks, 200 bucks a month, which obviously isn't bad to own a place. And so I was inquiring, should I consider passing off that garbage to them at a flat rate of $25 a unit, excluding the year-long lease gentleman, and then also raising their rent 5%, or don't risk it with tenants who have been there for 5 years and who may be paying on time every time, right? Is it worth maybe losing a tenant over that, 80 bucks per unit? That was a lot to throw at you guys, so hopefully it made sense.
No, it's a great question. Anybody in the group have experience with increasing rent or kind of passing on the costs? I'm curious to what other people in the group have done recently.
I can share my own experience as a counter example. I think I have a house that I live in, and then I rent part of the house to a tenant, and then because we don't have separate meters, the everything like utilities are all included, and you know, when it comes to summer, it's like my PG&E bill hits like 300 something every month, and I think that's a lot. Because like some the friends that I know, they don't have as much utility bill. I guess like from what I read on Brandon Turner's book, um, it's probably better to pass or incentivize the tenants to like limit their variable utility costs. For example, if you pay all the electricity bill, then and say it's all inclusive, then they don't have an incentive to save on electricity bill. So that kind of bill is probably better to pass to the tenant. Although I guess ultimately it really depends on like whether the market condition allows you to pass that cost.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I don't have personal experience to your issue, but I would say it's really driven by what the market can support. What do other, like if you looked right now for a house that's property that's like yours, what do those guys cover? And what kinds of, where do you fall? If you're $100 under market rent, then maybe there's room to adjust it. But if
And
you're already high or where, I think that's where they're going to look when you tell them they're going to pull up rent.com or whatever and see, where else can we live in this neighborhood.
And that's an excellent point, and that kind of does help kind of put things in perspective. And I say that because you mentioned, what will the market allow, and how's the rent maybe. And the one of the issues that we're having, a side note, is the whoever runs the rental survey, whether that's the appraiser or someone within that spectrum, basically when he did the comps, the total income for this triplex based on the averages in the area total should be around $1,800, but it's currently at $2,300. So they're already at top dollar for their rent. It's even a little over. So it may not be justified to say I'm going to raise your rent even more than what's considered average market rent right now, and that might be something to consider. I'm still working on getting the rent roll, and I'm curious to know that if these tenants who have been on month to months for years, as by the way it seems, if they've been at that consistent $600 a month for one of the units for the last 5 years, I couldn't see that being the same price. I mean, maybe then, yeah, because it's now inflated. I'm not sure, but either way. Yeah, I mean, if they never had their rent raised, they might be like, okay, well, we probably saw this coming, or they might say, well, we're already at top dollar, so yeah, we're out.
Yeah, I had a question that's not quite, it's a little bit related, but similar. And that is, when you did this acquisition, what kind of due diligence did you do on the tenants that are there? And that was kind of when you guys brought this topic up, that was sort of one of the things I was interested in. And one thing I've heard about is this estoppel agreement where you ask them to tell you what their understanding of the rent is. Each of the renters need to fill out this form to kind of tell you what they when they believe their lease is up, what their rent is, and all these kinds of things. And so I'm wondering, did you do that? And then I think the other question would be, a concern that I would have about inheriting tenants would be, how do you know what their credit situation is? Like, I think it was one of you guys had mentioned about your 3 times the rent and 660 credit. You're buying these people at whatever their capabilities and situations are. And I'm wondering, how much do you guys investigate those before you do the purchase?
Yeah, those are really great questions. The first one is we have the estoppel agreement. I made sure to inquire about that, and we did receive that. Everything checks out from what they originally told us, and there are signatures. I mean, what I would assume we're saying, right? I mean, you get the document sent to you an email by your realtor, you just assume it's all legit. So, but yeah, they signed the estoppel agreement. Everything checks out. The estoppel agreement doesn't necessarily go back, obviously, for the last 5 years what the rent looks like. That would be the rent roll. But yeah, as of everything looks great on the estoppel agreement. I will say, as far as additionally for the due diligence, what I was able to do is when we first checked out the property, all the tenants were home. And so I spent some time chatting with the tenants, and more so almost like an interview process, but really just trying to get to know them. How long have you been here? How long do you plan on staying here? What's it like? How's the neighborhood? Any ongoing issues? Anything that's been, and for all they knew, I was just looking just to, for all they knew is we need to come see the property and someone's come to look at it. So, who knows what they were thinking about it, but so that was good. It gave me a feel for each tenant. And then lastly, you mentioned about, so yeah, you're absolutely right. You are buying these tenants. Fortunately, 2 of them are month to month, and they're, you could, if I could run a credit check, right? I'm sure I could, right? If they're on a month to month, I could say, look, I'm taking over this place. I want to run a credit check. I feel like at this point, if they've been there for 5 years, I take a look at this rent roll that we're supposed to get. If it shows that they paid on time every time for the last 5 years, their jobs are pretty secure, and as long as they've been paying rent and that they, they are working, I don't know if I would go through, and I'm not sure if this is a foolish thing to do, so feel free to chime in, anybody. I'm not sure if I would, at this point, bother going through the credit check, because I've already worked out my landlord binder, something that we learned in Brandon Turner's work, managing rental properties. I have like my criteria of like a 600 credit score or more, all these different things, income requirements. But again, if the past 5 years have shown that they've been awesome, rent on time, I may not put them through that. One's a little old lady. She's like in her 70s, 60s, like retired, fixed income. And then the other one, he could be questionable, but he was, they all seem really great when I talked to them in person. Of course they all, maybe want to come off as great because they don't need to raise their rent. I don't know, but yeah. So I hope that could have answered your question. If you have anything to follow up with, feel free.
Yeah, Mark, I'll chime in a little bit with my my strategy here. I actually acquired a duplex in Indianapolis probably 2 months ago with inheriting the tenants. With that in mind, I try my best not to inherit tenants. The first single family I got from Indianapolis, I had one person stop paying rent a month after I acquired it, and we had to evict them. And then I had another. It went vacant for 3 months. Had another tenant pay 2 months rent and then stop paying, and we had to evict him as well. So definitely, it's a tough situation if you don't do the background check or any kind of background on the tenant. I will say for this most recent duplex, I did a little bit more due diligence on the tenant, kind of similar to what you did. I will say, to your point, I did look at some indicators as proxies for how I think they will perform. So, for example, the duplex that I acquired, it was professionally managed by a property manager, and I did have the rental agreements and the leases that they initially signed. So that to me gave me an indicator that they did meet the criteria of that property manager. So I don't necessarily have to rerun a lot of those same checks, because if the property manager approved it and I know the property manager's criteria, then by osmosis, it also passes those same criteria. In terms of, oh, sorry, Mark, did you have a question on that one?
No, I was just going to say that's while we have the estoppel agreement, I have not seen, I've seen, I think, parts of the lease, I want to say, or maybe what was originally the estoppel agreement, either way, but that would be good to know what the property manager's criteria was. Because I don't know that. So that would be good to know. And that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's a little tough if you're doing if you're buying it from somebody who's also an individual investor and they don't have confirmed like set in stone criteria for screening tenants. But if it's through a professionally managed property manager and you know that they only accept tenants at 550 and 2x rent, then by osmosis you know that they qualify at least those criteria. And then to your second point about raising rents, I've had to do that for one tenant for a property that doesn't really cash flow for me, but has appreciated quite a bit. There wasn't really that much of a concern because I hadn't raised his rent in 2 months. So, or sorry, not 2 months, 2 years. So that was a little bit more of an understanding. I try to go less than 5%, try to do, like a more digestible number, like $100 every 2 years, something a little bit easier to take. But, the bigger issue I have with, I haven't raised rents with any of the other properties I have. just because I the rental the rehabbing cost has been quite prohibitive for some of the properties I have. So having to, I don't know, refinish the floors or repaint the interior or replace baseboards or retile or revinyl the kitchen. Those, if you calculate that and add it all up, I go probably 1 to 2 years back in terms of cash flow at that point. So I try my best to not raise rent if it does risk them potentially moving out. And I think Derek's point about what the market rent is really important. But I think for me, I'm a buy and hold investor very long term. Like I see myself potentially retiring early and doing this full time and becoming an active investor probably 5, 10 years down the line. So what that means for me is right now I'm racking up losses quite a bit in terms of my taxes. And so once I do switch over to active investor, I can take all those losses. So, it's not ideal to negative cash flow in some situations, but as taking that negative passive loss on your tax history, and then eventually 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, switching over to active investor, you can deduct all of those from your income and then pretty much not have to pay taxes on that going forward. Not tax advice, obviously. So definitely reach out to your CPA, but that's been my game for the past 5, 6 years is, I'm okay taking losses right now. I work a 9 to 5 and I'm able to deduct some of those from my income to offset it. But eventually when I do become a full-time investor, I'm able to deduct all of it. So that's kind of my long-term play on that front.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just a quick time check. We're at 7:47, so we got about 13 minutes here. I know there's some topics that we still want to discuss, so we'll make sure we hit on those. And then again, if you have any announcements or any plugs that you want to make at the end, please send me a message on Zoom and I'll make sure I have time for you. So one question I wanted to bring up, one topic is experience with rental income insurance. This is a really, I've had a lot of people direct message me on our Slack channel, kind of curious about other people's experience with this. Personally, I haven't had experience with this. I'm curious if anybody else has had experience with rental income insurance. I think Yauha, this is kind of, and Vineet, this is kind of up your alley since you kind of mentioned kind of curious about the status of rent collections. But I guess the first question is, has anybody had experience with rental income insurance, and what's your experience been with that? So feel free to chime in if you're familiar with this. Okay. Doesn't seem like too many people here have that. One thing I mentioned in the Slack channel was I was talking with somebody who's in our Slack channel, and I had mentioned that while I don't have experience with rental income insurance, early on in the coronavirus, I actually applied for an EIDL, Economic Impact Disaster Loan, I believe is the acronym. So that has been really helpful for me for those tenants who haven't paid rent. It's basically a loan by the SBA, Small Business, Association Administration, where they give you funds to help cover rent if you haven't received rental income. So I would recommend that to all of you if that's something that you foresee as something that might be hurting your business. They do allow loans to sole proprietorships, so you're welcome to do that. So I encourage you to do that if that's something you're concerned about. So the last two topics here, and I think Nico, this was your topic when you submitted, was investor-friendly title companies. And then ultimately, I know a bunch of you listed out different investment tactics that you're interested about. I know Jason, you had mentioned Burr in your registration and whatnot. So I do want to make sure it's an open forum. If you have any questions on these remaining topics or any other questions, feel free to chime in. Kind of what are you curious? What do you want to hear more about? What do you need help with? Feel free to jump in with your questions or comments here.
Hey, this is a question for Vineet and Willie. Have you guys ever worked with wholesalers in your target market, and have you made any deals with them? Have they found any rentals for you?
Vineet, feel free to chime in if you've gone that route.
Yeah, so I recently, not recently, like for a few months, I've been working with different wholesalers, but my experience, it has been like either they are very highly priced, or or their estimation of work has been, it's like way off. Like, and especially in East Bay, they're like in Oakland and all that, where I buy, and in some zip codes I buy, like there's just been way off. So I haven't bought anything from them, but I know a couple of them, and I get emails and all that from it. But I have been in touch with a few. So
Yeah, then my experience with wholesalers, I've only bought one from a wholesaler. I will say I got lucky, and I think we were talking about this with Gerald and James about buying a property that was able to appreciate quite quickly. I got that from a wholesaler. I got lucky in terms of the neighborhood that the property was in. That's been rising quite a bit. But yeah, to Vineet's point, I've every wholesale listing email that I've gotten has never really been able to cash flow. They've already baked in the price into what they're potentially selling the property for. One thing I would recommend is, and I know Gerald and Nico, you guys are looking down the wholesaler route here. You know, I have a network of realtors that I work with in the different areas that I've lived in, and I've actually started to see these realtors retain their own network of buyers rather than actually, you know, rather than properties going to wholesalers. So I've seen the rate at which realtors are keeping their own listings increase rather than wholesalers having increases. I think for them, obviously for them, they take double commission on the representing the seller and the buyer, and they're able not having to worry about putting a sign up, cleaning up the house for open houses, or kind of splitting commission with somebody else. So I don't know what that means in terms of the trend of wholesalers and how successful they are, but that's something that I have been noticing. I don't have numbers behind that, but that's a potential trend that may impact your wholesale business.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Great. We have a few minutes here, so if you have any other questions or comments, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in.
Billy, can I ask some? Oh, no, go ahead if someone has a question. So.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. If anybody had any BRRRR experience, that's what I'm focused on out of state. But I guess in state would remain the same. And it's really dealing with the contractors, right? Because one of the key parts about BRRRR is getting them over there to give you a bid prior to you actually purchasing the property. If anybody has had any experience, I want to see how did they structure that? Did they pay them to come out, or like what did that look like to actually get the contractor out? And then what was the timing of it, right? Because that's the key. Like if you find a property, on the MLS or off the MLS, and you need to get a bid on what the work would cost to get it, repaired. Does anybody have any experience with that?
Yeah, so I could just share my experience with my property in Fayetteville. So it's not perfect and it's a mess. So don't take advice from me. But I read David Green's book, and I really agree with him that you need to find a collection of rock stars, that like a team of people that will help you. So in Fayetteville, where I bought a house, I had a really good realtor, an excellent team that he has. He's got access to PMs and all kinds of resources, and contractors gave me suggestions, ran interference for me, finding those people. And unfortunately, I didn't take their advice and sign up with them, with that contractor right away. I got a price. It's like 20 grand or whatever. I should have just done it right then, immediately. And I sat on it and I thought, well, I'll try another contractor. And I got some advice from another PM and kind of kicked around. And it was just a time sink, a total time sink, because of the business level that there is right now. All the contractors are super busy. So my advice is get that locked down. You know, if you're, fortunately I was self-funding and it wasn't a problem. It's still a problem. I'm losing money, but get that locked down before you buy the house, right? In terms of the timing, not only the dollars, but also the timing of that thing. And then also the key is find that collection of, you know, that rock star kind of, it could be a realtor, it could be somebody else, but they'll have a group of resources for you, and get that done, you know, before you pull the trigger. But they can really help you. And just one of the things I was going to ask you guys about, I was hoping to, you know, when I don't know, sometime, is I'm looking at multifamilies, and there's a realtor in that area, Stockton, which is Sean Milam and Ron Benning. And it seems like they have a lot, they seem like the rock stars in that area, at least with regard to multis. And I was curious about anybody's experience with them. But I think that's the key, is find that helper for you.
Thanks, Eric. Yauha, I saw you came off of mute for a second. Do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I was like seeing nobody speaking. So like I don't have experience with Burr itself, but like I noticed that recently the material cost has been skyrocketing, and then also the banks have been tightening their lending standards. So if you're doing Burr right now, you probably want to watch out these factors.
Yeah, thanks, Yauha. I'll add my 2 cents and then we'll close out to announcements. So Jason, I haven't done Burr in the sense of the refinance part, but prior to that, the other BRR, other letters, in terms of that, my strategy has always been to use my property manager who also has a contractor branch of their business. That's been really helpful for me. To Derek's point, it does help with getting the repairs done really quickly upon closing, because they have an incentive, right? If you're going to give them the house to manage, then you have a foot in the door to get in their priority list of projects for that their contracting arm of their property of their business. And so they will, what I've seen done for myself is there's a home I wanted to acquire. I haven't acquired it yet. I talked to my property manager, said, when I acquire this home, I plan to give it to you to manage. Can you send your contractor from your contracting arm to take a look, go through the inspection report, let me know how much you think it's going to cost? So that they have an incentive, because they know they're going to get my business. They know they're going to get this property, and they know that they can potentially get that work as soon as I acquire the home also. So that's been helpful for me to price how much it's going to cost to repair the home once I do acquire it, and also get on top of that list of long projects that they have. So I would recommend that. If you don't, that's obviously if you don't have a network of contractors. You know, it's that I do pay a premium for that. You know, I'm sure I could get better quotes and bids from other contractors, but in terms of time, my stress level, my waiting, I think it's definitely worth it in that sense. Cool. With that, we're at 8 o'clock. I want to save a little bit of minutes for announcements. So Mark, you sent over in the chat, if you want to unmute yourself and give a quick announcement before we log off here, feel free to.
Yeah, this might be a little bit of a shameless plug, not necessarily real estate related, but it is a good time. About 4 years ago, started in the bar industry, and a buddy of mine, we met in the bar industry. And about a year and a half ago, we started a mobile bartending business where we travel from here to the Bay Area to Monterey, and locally Stockton, Modesto, Lodi. And we've done bartended weddings up to 230 people to 18 people because of COVID recently. We've done a lot of corporate events, and it's really become our baby over the last year and a half. And we take it very serious, but we have a great time, and we just plan on growing it. So if you have any events coming up and you want to add that flair, we are your guys. It's called On Point Mobile Bartending, and we service all over. We bring everything you need, or bring as little as you like, and it's a good time. So a quick Google search, you'll find a lot on Point Mobile Bartending.
Awesome, Mark.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I love the hustle. Feel free to put the website or your handle on the chat so that we can all find you. So that'd be great. I know a lot of people can use a drink right now. In terms of announcements to close out, we're having really great discussions on Slack. So if you're not on there, it is at the bottom of each email address. I will say we've had some properties listed on Slack by other investors in the network. So if you want to get a jump on some of the properties listed, definitely talk about there. Vineet has been great in surfacing some really interesting articles that impact us as California real estate investors. And there, like Gerald mentioned, there's some really more experienced real estate investors, especially people in the multifamily space that are on Slack. So if you want to join us on Slack, have that discussion, that would be great. And then I'll shameless plug my own project. I'm developing an app, basically helping people who have rental properties. It's basically a giant spreadsheet that you're able to enter your information, your income, your expenses, so that you can keep track of your cash flow, keep track of the rent roll, all in your mobile device. It's iOS right now. We're working on the Android app. Feel free to download it. Let me know your feedback. What do you want from an app that oversees your financials for your rental property? And then ultimately, we're actually going to be launching a social networking feature where you can take a look at other rental properties that have been submitted on the app so that you can kind of see how much they cash flow, how much they profit in different areas. So it's called the Rental Property Dashboard. It's on iOS, free to download. Check it out. Let me know if you have any feedback. I appreciate it. And hopefully it'll be a good resource for all of you. With all of that said, we're at 8:03. I want to thank all of you for joining. A lot of you are first timers. Hopefully you're like Vineet. We don't scare you away and you come back for the next one. I know holidays are around the corner in December, so we'll be in touch about when the next mastermind is in December, but feel free to continue discussion on Slack. Thank you all for joining, and we'll sign off for today.